Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. Here are your weekly agricultural updates for the 24th of May, 2026. Right now, India's massive agricultural system is sitting at a really critical inflection point. As our weekly headlines show, we are seeing a total collision of extreme weather, shifting input economics, and major policy signals that are completely reshaping the landscape ahead of the highly anticipated kharif season. Today, we're mapping out the complex, interacting variables squeezing the Indian agricultural sector right now. We'll be looking at the climate and monsoon divide, crop intelligence and sowing, the input cost squeeze, markets, prices and policy, regional hotspots and risks, and finally, some strategic, actionable insights. Let's get right to it. Starting off with our agro-climatic analysis, we have the climate and monsoon divide that is truly shaping up to be a tale of two extremes. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark weather divide confirmed by the IMD. Up north and in central India, we're talking about severe baking heat waves. Delhi is sitting near 45 degrees, and Vidarbha is pushing a blistering 47 degrees Celsius. I mean, you could practically fry an egg on a tractor hood up there. But then look at south and northeast India. They are experiencing an early monsoon advance with heavy pre-monsoon storms. This dramatic split is creating immense dynamic tension for early sowing and land preparation nationwide.
Moving along to crop intelligence and sowing, let's take a look at the current Zaid or summer season shifts.
So how is this erratic weather impacting planting? Well, total summer sowing has actually increased by 3% to over 86 lakh hectares. But the real story here is what farmers are choosing to plant. As you can see, they're strategically shifting away from water-intensive summer paddy. Instead, they're leaning heavily into pulses like urad, which is up an incredible 29%. Oilseeds and coarse cereals like millets are also seeing solid gains. They're clearly adapting to both weather risks and changing market demands. Let's shift our focus from the soil to the systemic economic pressures compressing farm margins right now in our section on the input cost squeeze. 3 rupees per liter. That sharp, recent hike in petrol and diesel prices is sending absolute shockwaves through the rural economy. With diesel now pushing somewhere between 91 and 96 rupees in the metros, this translates to drastically higher cultivation costs. We're talking more expensive tractor operations, irrigation pumps, and mandi transport. It's a massive and immediate hit directly to a farmer's bottom line. Now, contrast that fuel squeeze with the national fertilizer situation. The center reports that stocks are comfortable, with over 200 lakh tons of urea and DAP available. That covers more than half of the projected kharif demand, and imports are secured through December. Sounds great, right? But while the national macro picture looks secure on paper, on the ground, farmer organizations are pointing to local availability issues and alleged black marketing. It really highlights that last-mile distribution remains a critical friction point. Let's guide this into how policy moves and market realities are compounding the input cost squeeze. Here's a look at markets, prices, and policy, specifically the procurement gap. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive shortfall occurring right now. The government set a wheat procurement target of 3.45 crore tons, but by early May, actual procurement was lagging significantly at just 2.17 crore tons. With huge buffer stocks already sitting in warehouses, procurement has practically stalled in key states like Haryana and UP, leaving farmers with a bumper crop but way fewer official buyers. And because of that procurement gap, we are seeing a stark difference in prices. The official minimum support price, or MSP, for wheat is 2,585 rupees per quintal, but the open market realization, that's hovering around 2,345 rupees. This 6 to 10% gap between the promised MSP and the harsh open market reality is forcing distress sales. And honestly, according to the source material, this precise gap, coupled with the rising fuel costs we just talked about, is a core driver behind the nationwide farmer protests currently taking place. Looking at the broader policy timelines, we can see the government is actively using trade policy to stabilize domestic consumer prices. But, as you might guess, it has direct consequences for farm incomes. For example, prohibiting sugar exports until September and waiving the customs duty on cotton imports until October. While these moves are designed to curb inflation, they effectively cap the upside income potential for sugarcane and cotton farmers right when their production costs are peaking. Let's bring this macro policy down to the ground. In our regional hotspots and risk section, we'll see exactly where these pressures collide.
Up in the northwest, places like Punjab, Haryana, and UP, severe storms and heavy winds are creating massive lodging risks for orchards and threatening wheat that's stored out in the open. Down in the central belts, particularly Vidarbha and Marathwada, that blistering 47-degree heat combined with sudden squalls is highly dangerous for any ultra-early plantings of cotton and soy. Over in the west, places like Gujarat and Maharashtra are facing a real mixed bag. There's a severe hail risk, but on the flip side, the storms are providing some highly beneficial pre-monsoon soil wetting. Moving over to the east and northeast, widespread rain is delivering great pre-sowing moisture for paddy, but it comes with an elevated risk of localized flooding and soil erosion. Finally, down in the South Peninsula region, like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Karnataka, the early rains are largely expanding the sowing window and are favorable for summer pulses and land prep. However, high wind and hail alerts mean farmers there need to be incredibly precise with their field scheduling to avoid seedling damage.
So, how do we handle this systems interpretation? Let's move into our strategic, actionable insights to navigate the squeeze. So the crucial point here for farmer-level implications over the next 4 to 8 weeks is strategy. First, agronomists are urging farmers in central and western rain-fed belts not to chase the first rain blindly. You've got to delay your main sowing for cotton and soy until the monsoon is firmly established. Second, in the south, exploit that moisture, but definitely pause sowing right before any predicted thundersqualls. And third, to combat those rising diesel costs, shift to split nutrient applications. Don't just dump a blanket high dose all at once. Tighten that cost discipline and manage your cash outlay by splitting it up. For our broader strategic outlook, the agricultural ecosystem has some really urgent work to do. Agronomists must start creating microzone risk maps right now, separating storm-prone villages from the heat-prone ones. Planners absolutely need to prepare contingency cropping menus, like short-duration millets, especially for districts that are highly sensitive to El Niño. And for agri-tech startups out there, your immediate opportunity is to develop monsoon risk dashboards linked to precise, localized fertilizer and irrigation schedules. These tools are absolutely crucial to help farmers optimize their super tight budgets. When you put it all together, we are looking at a profound system squeeze, with input costs rising, output prices effectively capped by policy, and a looming 35% probability of an El Niño drought. The tension is palpable. So the big question is, with rising inputs, capped outputs, and this drought probability, how will El Niño reshape India's rural economy this kharif season? It's a massive puzzle, and we'll be tracking the data closely as the monsoon progresses. Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep learning.